Now let's get more practical. If burnout happens when some part of your life is more demanding than your ability to recover, then the obvious solution would be to reduce demands. But as we discussed earlier, that is not always something you can control. You can't just opt out of difficult patients or busy schedules or workplace expectations. But there is an often overlooked truth that becomes a major leverage point. How hard something feels is not just determined by the task itself, but by everything else you bring into that moment. What I call your burden. In simple terms, the difficulty is the demand of the task plus your burden. We all recognize that some situations are objectively harder than others. Evaluating a complex chronic pain patient is much harder than a straightforward post-op knee. Managing 6 patients on the floor at once is much harder than 2. Getting criticized is harder than being encouraged. Life really does exist on a spectrum of difficulty. But here's the deeper layer that most people miss. The exact same task can feel and be wildly different depending on your burden. Take running 1 mile. That is a very different experience if you are fresh, the top line, compared to if you just got done doing 1,000 squats, even though that mile has not changed. Paying $10,000 for a new air conditioner feels very different if you have savings versus debt. That difficult patient is much easier to handle when you're caught up and clear-headed than when you're behind on 10 notes and mentally exhausted. This is where we gain leverage. We don't always have to change the hard moments themselves to make them easier. We can change what we bring into them. If we reduce our burden, we increase our capacity, and the exact same life becomes more manageable. And here's a key realization. It doesn't matter which burden you reduce. It all helps. If you're carrying a 100-pound backpack and you remove 20 pounds, it gets lighter no matter which 20 pounds you take out. Some burdens in your life may be fixed or outside your control, at least for now, but that doesn't mean you're stuck. If you remove other weights, maybe you get better sleep, you finish some more tasks so you're less behind, you reduce emotional friction, then the whole system becomes easier. And that's why focusing on what's in your control is so powerful. Now, burnout itself is a burden. Burnout makes your life harder and more burnout inducing, which is why it's a self-sustaining cycle. But it's far from the only burden. Being sleep deprived, having a nagging injury, being behind on tasks, emotional stress, the list is endless. And that's where more hope comes in. You don't even have to attack burnout head on to make progress. If you reduce other sources of burdens, even small ones, life gets easier. And when life gets easier, it becomes much more possible to recover and pay down that fatigue debt. So now, you know that we need to reduce our burdens, and in the next episode, I'll give you an upgraded view of how to actually do that effectively.